Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Echo Chamber Reviews, where this it's been months, we'll be discussing Stranger Things 3, the third installment in the Stranger Things trilogy.
A new host.
It's building something.
No matter what happens, we have to stop him.
Stranger Things, as some of you may be aware, is a series, probably the only good thing that Netflix has ever made.
I don't think that's inaccurate.
And so it's kind of like an homage to 80s horror movies. It's generally just 80s culture. The first one was pretty tight. The story was
Nice, self-contained.
yeah, very contained, a little derivative, but that was part of the charm. You know, it didn't subvert your expectations too much. It was a very clean cut and straightforward story. The second one was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Mostly well written, mostly well acted. There was the infamous episode that nobody liked.
What was that, 7?
The second to the last one. So
Yeah,
I think
whatever.
we all have 8. So yeah, about like the other kids that had been experimented on.
Yeah, in
and
Chicago? Was it in
somewhere.
Chicago? I don't know.
Somewhere obviously. Not. I'd also like to say it as a sidebar. Everything that happens outside of Hawkins in this show is usually bad. Because
Yeah.
there's that episode, and then there's the guy, like the matchmaker guy,
Yeah.
who ends up like connecting. What are their names?
Jonathan and Nancy.
And Nancy, which I thought was really dumb. That was probably my least favorite part of the second season, because I really respected the first season for teasing that relationship, but then not going through with it because it would have been cliche and cheesy.
It's supposed to be the will they, won't they, you know what I mean?
Will they?
But they won't. But now they will.
Will buyers they?
Fuck off.
Point is, the first 2 seasons were solid, and these ones together kind of formed their own story that was like one through line. I would say this one, for the first time, the third season, I would say kind of almost feels tacked on. Like, this does not feel essential at all. I don't think it was bad. The third season, I don't think it was bad by any stretch, but I did think that it was, it was the writing was definitely a little sloppier. The acting was not nearly up to par with the last season, and generally, I think the concepts are just pushing
Recycled a little bit.
I was gonna say pushing suspension of disbelief, because we'll get into that. I guess we'll do the spoilers, because that's the way that we
Do we need to do spoiler free? I think anyone who's gonna watch it has watched it at this point.
Well, that's been my argument for why do we do spoiler free in the first place. But okay,
It's just a courtesy thing.
a courtesy thing. You're welcome.
Trying to be a courteous fella.
Audience.
We're gonna spoil the shit out of this.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah, the third season feels like almost a repeat in like the broader plot points of season 2. Yes. I feel like revisiting the Mind Flayer, opening the portal, like all that kind of stuff is kind of recycled. Now, obviously, it's presented differently, but it feels very familiar. I was expecting it to go. The thing is, it's always built off of itself, right?
Sure.
And in some ways, I dislike that. Like, I would still say the first season is my favorite. I like the nice, tight story. It's very self-contained. It's 8 hours long. It's basically like a really, really long movie, and you've got a nice, simple story. There's not a lot of craziness, overall. There's not huge blowout action scenes in malls, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
It's pretty, like the climactic scenes are like a few people in a house, and the lights are flickering, right? I like that more than what we've gotten to now, which is they have huge budgets now.
Yeah, it's gotten a little too popular for its own good.
They've got such a big budget now that they've got a giant mall, a giant fair, so many set pieces, so many locations, and they're beautiful. They look really great, and a giant CG monster that looks really great for a TV show. But in some ways, I think it loses what made Stranger Things great, which is the more like the slower, the more subtle stuff, and the slower burn to like a mystery, feeling like we're slowly unraveling things. And now it's just like, here's a giant action set piece, here's another giant action set piece, and
yeah, this season really got away from. I think, in a word, what you're saying is that the first season and in a way the second season was grounded.
Yeah, much more
grounded.
so. Yeah.
And this season got away from not only that, but also the tone of the previous 2, which part of that is just an effect of like the universe is already established. You know, so characters can't discover everything for the first time again, which is a big draw. I think for the first one, just like nobody knows what's going on. It's all about the mystery. It's all about solving it. And this one didn't really have like much of a mystery to solve, and all the mysteries that they did introduce wrapped up pretty quickly, or the explanation
Or don't
didn't
go
make
anywhere.
sense.
Yeah.
Like to use an example, I'll choose like the Russian subplot, right? Which I actually liked including Soviets as the villains. I think we had that really old review of Stranger Things Season 2, which will never get released.
Yeah.
But I said in that one that I wanted them to do more with the Soviet angle. Sadly, I don't think they really realized what I was
They're
going
just a two-dimensional villain.
They made
Russians bad. Russians do science thing, and that's it.
They made them like straight up Saturday morning cartoon villains, and I contrast that with the way that they were portrayed in, I think it was the first season, where they had like the flashback where Eleven was trying to contact that Soviet agent telepathically, or like not contact, but you know, like
Yeah, find him. Yeah.
and that felt like pretty much like it could have been happening, you know, like that felt realistic to a point. And this they're just kind of like bumbling, you know, can do no right. Their secret base has only one exit. They're chasing 4 kids around, and they post no guards at the exit. You
The
know,
guards,
like,
yep. It was definitely a lot more, just generally a lot sloppier in terms of, was it really well made? Yes, but it was just generally a lot more slap happy, and a lot of the, especially with the base and everything. Yep, there's the one entrance, and you've got the goofy, like the general guy, right? And he's got the big old, you know, very stereotypical like dictator garb going on, and then he brings in the evil doctor, the Nazi doctor kind of guy.
That was a joke. Like that guy
Right,
looks
with
like
the
such a
with the big old apron on,
huge
and
nose,
the
and,
huge
like,
nose
the
and the hair and
spectacles.
everything,
It's
and it's like, come on, like really?
And I think getting back to like the mystery aspect of the Russian subplot, that's the biggest place where they dropped the ball, because like the fact that the Russians at the height of the Cold War built a huge military complex and stationed basically a division of the Red Army in rural Indiana is a bit of a stretch by itself, but the way that they discover that I thought was really dumb.
I liked the idea, but
the
idea was really cool that they built Starcourt Mall as a way to cover it up.
Right.
But the way that they find it is so stupid.
That by itself, I think they could have made that work, like the aspect of them hiding.
Well, even like the radio stuff was cool. Like I liked, but
what is it? Who were they broadcasting the code to?
Exactly.
For example, this is what I meant.
Other Russians.
The writing was sloppy. It's like
other Russians.
Yeah, they were broadcasting
to the guys, the other Russians.
Other Russians in America. Yeah, I guess the people who would have already known where the base was.
Right.
B. How did the microphone in the room thousands of miles, not miles, but thousands of feet, you know, below Starcourt pick up the noise of the hobby horse?
Right.
And like that was like a major plot point in how they figured it out, that that Russians were in Starcourt. It doesn't really connect.
No, it doesn't at all. As a concept, I really like it, but in execution, it lacks a number of logical steps.
Yeah.
There's a few steps that are missed to making a valid logical conclusion.
I think that if they would have scrapped a lot of the dumb subplots in this, like there were too many characters.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
They could have.
Well, I think we even mentioned that in our Stranger Things 2 review that will never see the light of day, is that they introduced like 3-4 new people.
Yeah, something like that.
And we're like, there's just too many. You don't need to introduce more people, or you have to start killing them off.
The audience will not care about this many people,
and you have to give them all something to do, which I think is another place where this season really stumbles. Is it's trying to give everybody something to do. And all of them kind of end up being lackluster because they can't have any one group get way too far ahead in discovering things. They have to kind of keep everybody in the same, at the same level of knowledge so that they can have their climax. But there's just too many moving parts and too many weird subplots that never really go anywhere.
It's sort of like Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
They tried it to go in so many directions that none of them were fully fleshed out and realized in their own right. And so the story as a whole kind of faltered at that point. Like the finale was not nearly as satisfying as the previous 2 seasons finales. And up to that point, I think that probably you could have cut like an entire episode of material from the first 7 episodes and just replaced that with some additional setup for the likable characters, like specifically Steve and Dustin. Like, if the showrunners took one cue from season 2, it's that dynamic works really well.
Oh yeah,
and
for
it still
sure.
does.
Yep.
They were the only likable characters this season.
Yeah,
pretty much,
absolutely.
Steve and Dustin. So I think that if they would have ran with that, gave them a little bit more to do, and kind of fleshed out the mystery aspect of the Russian subplot, that would have been a better use of time.
I think that's one of my biggest disappointments of this season is that they really blew it with the Russian subplot. Because when it was building up to that, and around the time that they discovered the base, it's like, this is cool, I'm on board with it. I don't necessarily agree with the execution, like I said, it's a little bit illogical, but I liked the concept. Like, it was a fun concept of the enemy in our midst kind of thing, right in front of you. But then they kind of just bungle around in the base a while, and it's apparently really easy to get in and out of that base.
Yeah, it completely destroyed like the feeling of isolation and how they should have been trapped and stuff.
Yep.
Because if the Russians in this season were not as incompetent as they were, then that pretty much half the season wouldn't have happened. And when you rely on your villains just being bad at their jobs, that always makes for a really unsatisfying conclusion. Because it's not about the wits of your heroes anymore. I mean, literally, 2 like prepubescents and 2 20-year-olds who were drugged escaped like the crack troops of the Red Army in the top secret base. It's like, I don't know. Like, it pushes, like I said earlier, it pushes suspension of disbelief pretty far.
And even at the end, even when everything's wrapping up, the Russians, as far as I know, never realized what they were doing. Like, they never knew what they were doing was bad per se. Like, we get, and that's what I mean when I say they blew it. And they kind of imply with the end that there's going to be more with that. But there was so little actually involving the Russians, right? Other than them just being a human obstacle. They don't seem to be aware of what's happening around them in terms of the giant flesh monster.
No.
And so even like during the climax of the entire last episode, where they're trying to shut the gate, trying to turn off the accelerator that's opening the gate.
Well, you even know the name for the machine.
Is it? I just said accelerator because it sounds right.
The right name,
sounds like a science thing, like a particle accelerator. I don't know. Sounds sciencey.
Whatever.
I don't know what it's called.
It sounded real. We'll go with
Thank
that.
you. Bluff. Made. I thought you were gonna call me out and be like, actually. But even when they're shutting that down, like, the Russians are trying to stop them, but the Russians don't know that there's like a giant flesh beast that's running rampant around the city, turning people into zombies for some reason.
Yeah, they really could have tied that plot more into the main storyline, because the Mind Flayer in this season also, in addition to it being pretty much exactly the same stuff we saw in season 2, was it really did not do a whole lot, honestly.
Well, and it does not build off of one of the things that I think the season 2 did pretty well was kind of continue to build off of the lore. So like the first season doesn't cover a lot of the lore of the Upside Down. We get little glimpses of it, but we don't get a lot. And then the second season kind of has like the whole like corruption thing where it's like basically terraforming Earth to be its own toxic habitat, right?
Sure.
Which I thought was kind of interesting, and they kind of started to slowly grow the universe and kind of explain it. This season feels like it does not know where it's going in terms of the Upside Down. The Upside Down is referenced one time. Towards the beginning when Billy gets turned into a Mind Flayer puppet.
Sure.
He gets mind flayed, and you see the Upside Down. There's one scene, and he's like he's walking in the Upside Down, and like a whole bunch of people that you can't really see, just like a crowd of people walks up, and I was like, that's pretty interesting. I can't wait for that to come into play later, because we're gonna see more of the Upside Down. Maybe we'll see the people living in the Upside Down, like you had kind of mentioned before. Something we'd see, because again, with a show like this, you kind of slowly build the lore and things. The puzzle starts to fit together, because they've, at least in the first 2 seasons, have always kind of made it scientific, supernatural. I mean,
pretty much
pretty scientific for supernatural stuff, right? It's not just like demon monster from hell,
right?
It's supposed to be like a world that has its own toxic environment and everything.
There's always like a rational explanation. For it.
Obviously,
like
suspension of disbelief, but even still, like, it's always kind of been grounded in itself. But this season just like doesn't care. Like, there's just a giant monster that makes people and animals eat chemicals
so that they explode.
They don't actually ever say that, I don't think. I guess they just explode because of the chemicals. Like, it needs that to turn them into jelly, and then it absorbs them into itself because it's like a dust monster, and then the dust monster takes the jelly and like glops it on.
Yeah.
But then it can have like jelly that like goes off and does its own thing.
It's like each bit of it, each individual
is an
cell
entire
is like,
organism.
Yeah, it's like individually sentient.
And I'm fine, but like.
Well, the thing is that makes it too hard to kill, and we talked about this briefly.
Well, yeah, we were gonna get. Yeah, I was gonna get to that in a bit. But...
Right, we'll talk about that. I think right now is that
fine. No time like the present.
Right, the way that it interacts with the Upside Down is pretty unsatisfying because there's no way that they've established to kill it without shutting off its connection to the Upside Down. So it's just the problem of like the Phantom Menace. You blow up the droid control ship and all the battle droids shut down. You know, it removes the threat of like the boots on the ground, which in this case would be like that Mind Flayer jelly monster, you know, which was pretty threatening, but it kind of it rounds the bend of being completely unthreatening because there's no way to actually damage it, and there's no impetus to even damage it at all because you could just blow up the gates or shut the gate off, and then it solves the problem by itself.
And that's the same thing that happened in season 2. They turn off the gate. And all the monsters die. All the little demodogs and everything die. And then guess what they do in this season? Same exact thing. In order to stop the thing, you just close the gate. Yep. And it was fine in 2. I was fine with that a little bit. I think we even mentioned it was kind of lame because it was the battle droids thing. Yep. But just to do it again of like, you have everyone in a very precarious situation, right? Everything's coming down to the wire. And they just shut the gate and then it dies. It just falls apart. It's like, oh, okay. And then the military gets there like 5 minutes later, like, hey guys.
Did you find it a little amusing that they warned the U.S. military that there was a bunch of Ruskies in rural Indiana, like playing with probably the most dangerous weapon mankind has ever known?
Even if it couldn't open a portal, it's basically a giant bomb.
Even if they didn't even get into the specifics, a bunch of
Russians built a mall.
Yeah, built a mall in Indiana. That by itself should have been enough to start like getting people mobilized, but they're just like, nah, we'll wait a week, see how it plays out, see if it calms down, you know. Yeah. It's no big deal.
What else? It kind of made me sad that the core gang, right? The four kids from the first one, other than Dustin, really don't do much.
Yeah.
Like Mike's whole thing is he's just having drama with 11 because he's a pubescent teen. And he wants to be smooching all the time.
Right.
Lucas is also in a relationship with the girl, the redhead.
Sam?
No.
Is that Sam? What is it?
I don't think it's Sam.
Max.
Yeah. Max Landis. Will doesn't want to grow up. So basically just like seriously though, those three, like the 3 original characters do like nothing the whole season.
Well, to be fair,
they don't even have any wacky adventures or anything.
Will did nothing in season 2 either, except be a plot device.
Right.
So yeah, Will is like the least character of all of them.
Well, yeah, now his new thing is just when they see the monster, he goes, "I feel it.
Yeah,
it's close." And they're like, "Yeah, it's breaking all the trees in the tri-state area.
I can see it and hear it." And it's also
Will,
massive.
how about you shut the fuck up and go sit in a corner? Which is sad because I liked him, like especially in the first season, he was good, but they just don't give him anything to do.
They don't give most
not that he needs to be the main character or anything. I don't think that either. But like he literally has nothing to do but be like, please play D&D with me the whole time.
Everybody, all of the characters that you want to see do more in this season, kind of just can never catch a break.
Yeah,
like him and Steve are constantly getting.
At least we got stuff with Steve and Dustin.
At least we got that.
I mean, there was that whole subplot. And it ended kind of wacky, but at least, you know, that was good. And Dustin got to be the father for Steve this time.
Sidebar, how did you feel about the never-ending story thing?
It was pretty funny.
You think so?
I mean, it was kind of stupid, but...
I mean, it's campy as hell.
It's campy as hell, but it kind of worked. I feel like it kind of worked.
Like, I wasn't against it. No. I think that if...
I chuckled.
It did kind of bother me that the rest of the season was not... very tonally consistent in
Yeah.
such a way that would allow it to end with a rendition of Neverending Story. But
That's fair.
because it just jumped around wildly from like people are exploding and all the gore and
Well,
stuff.
that's the thing is
and like all this wackiness at the end that was completely cartoonish.
overall it was a lot like more violent and edgier in terms of the gore and stuff. Like it was pretty like for a TV-14 show, I felt it was pretty gory. People exploding and melting. And you know, even like just tonally a lot darker in parts with like the woman eating the fertilizer and stuff. Like it's more disturbing, right? But yeah, then you'll have weird stuff where it's like we want to be darker and edgier and get away with more violence, and then you'll just have the wacky scenes.
Right. On the note of the characters in this season and how they relate to their previous appearances, I'm gonna go into this. I was really weirded out by Hopper's performance.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
He did feel different.
And not in like the toxic masculinity way either. All right. What I'm saying is the way that he interacts with other characters always hinges on him being like the butt of a joke. And he kind of
Fat Rambo.
Yeah, Fat Rambo. Like making occasional jokes at his expense is fine, but his inclusion in this series was just to be like dumped on constantly and always have this like doy brain damage expression on his face. It was like they flanderized the hometown aspect of his character from season 1, where he wasn't like obviously Hopper has never been like super intelligent or erudite or anything, but it's like they flanderized that into being his entire character, just like this brain dead, you know, Hulk of a man, which I think kind of, it was a little bit jarring, and it was a little bit, it could have been handled better.
And he's kind of a pushover in this season.
Which is a little weird too, because it's contrary to like the Hulk out sort of. He was supposed to.
Well,
be
he like goes and beats
muscle.
up the mayor, but then he's kind of a pushover for everything else. It's fine.
And here's the thing. They blew the whole mayor thing
Way too early.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that should have been after
Incredibly
like
early.
the because I think that was before the Russian stuff, wasn't it? Or during.
I think it was.
I watched all of this in like a day.
It was during the investigation into the Russian stuff. If I'm
Okay.
recalling. But what they
It was
should
still
have-
really early on into that though, wasn't it?
They shouldn't have had like a physical altercation. They could have
Yeah.
had Hopper go in there and
Threaten him.
confront him and say like, or you know, blackmail him, or just go in there and get some information. You know, but like the fact that he immediately threatens him, he immediately
Starts beating the
knows that
shit
it's
out of
Yeah,
him,
right.
yeah.
He immediately goes for like life-threatening. You know, that's like it ups the bar to the point where Carrie Elwes is never really. You never really get that dynamic again of like the fencing, the verbally.
Yeah.
You know?
Shout out to Carrie Elwes. Man deserves more roles. That was
This
it.
is a sidebar. Thanks, Carrie Elwes.
I just like Carrie Elwes, and I feel like he's not in enough stuff. That's all.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
You're gonna leave that in, right?
You bet.
Yeah, he also like he was introduced and then like right away gets threatened within an inch of his life. They should have introduced him like way early on and like kind of built him because he's never shown up before. The mayor has never been a character before. They should have had more of a rapport.
Yep.
He kind of just shows up, gets the shit beat out of him, and then that's kind of it. He doesn't do anything else after that. Like why?
And the other thing is that you never get the sense of betrayal because everybody like it's supposed to be a cathartic moment later in the season when Joyce just socks him.
That
And
was
it's
such a weird
but he's never been portrayed as being friendly to any of them. He's
No.
always been like the wine and dine, you know, like
Well, and he's kind of an idiot. Like he sold a bunch of property to a bunch of sketchy people.
is that idiocy or is that being evil though?
I guess, but even still, like when Joyce hits him or kicks him in the balls, I didn't feel especially good. I'm like, he's always been a scumbag.
That's
like,
my point. Yeah. Like,
no, I know that's your point. I also agree.
Sure.
I just got
Okay.
there in a roundabout way.
Yeah, they really could have. They should have had him portrayed as a sympathetic character early on, so that his inevitable betrayal would have stung a little bit more. That's
Yeah.
how I probably would have. I mean, yeah, that's how I would have done it. You know, if I was the runner of a multi-billion-dollar show,
Right,
you
for
know.
sure.
But I think that would have really sunk the dynamic that they were going for between the main characters and Carrie Elwes in this season. But it just. He never contributes anything to the season, pretty much, except for that one scene that happened way too early between him and Hopper, you know?
Yeah, in general, I felt like there was a lot of stuff that was kind of just like same episode it was introduced in, just used as some kind of a plot device and then forgotten about. Like example, the green solution in the elevators.
I thought that was going to come up later.
Because it's acidic. It's like xenomorph blood.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And they use it to escape out of the elevator. It cracks and it goes on the floor and it's acidic. And the only other time it's brought up again is when Dustin and Erica use it to escape by melting through like hundreds of layers of floor or something. What was that?
Yeah.
Because wouldn't they want to go up?
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Because don't they
scene
look
very
down?
well. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember
This could be
anything that happens in that scene.
spoiler or not spoiler alert. Word of caution. I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure they look down, not up. They must have been up. They must have climbed up, but wouldn't they? Never mind.
Yeah,
We're not gonna think about it too
fall
much.
down on their faces.
How would you like burn acid upwards?
Yeah. I don't know.
I want to
Not what
revisit
thought.
that now because I don't think that makes sense. Because I'm pretty sure that's how they escaped, wasn't it?
I don't
Dustin and
remember.
Erica?
I was checked out by that point mentally.
Okay.
What I thought they kept showing it conspicuously, like Chekhov's xenomorph blood.
Yep.
Later in the season, like when Hopper and Joyce were in that room, you know.
I was like, oh, can't wait for this to be
Yeah,
something.
they're gonna throw it.
Nope.
or they're
Apparently, it's
gonna-
just fuel for the accelerator. Like, right?
Everybody
that was
knows
what it was for.
that in order to get to the Upside Down, you have to A, have enough xenomorph blood, and B, put a giant spinning butcher blades on the
Yes.
end of the
Yep.
on the end of the
Make sure it has some good
accelerator.
exposed butcher blades so
Yep.
you can cut up the Terminator.
Dolph Vader, that was my
Yep.
nickname for him.
What else? Oh, I didn't really get the zombie army thing. I thought that was gonna be something like kind of Eldritch. Like in all the Eldritch games, there's always like the yokels that are like evil and swinging blades above their head. You know what I mean?
The
Like
cultists.
yeah, like just like well, not even the cultists. They're just like brainwashed zombie people, right?
People who stare into the abyss when the abyss stared back.
Right, and then so like you go into the town, and then oh, things aren't what we thought. It's a bunch of hillbillies. I thought they were gonna do something with them. They never do. There's like two of them that go and fight in the hospital
That's
against
right,
Jonathan and
yeah.
Nancy.
Those
Why do we have
two.
such a hard time with that?
Because they're not characters anymore. They've been relegated to
There's
plot
way
devices
too many
in
characters.
this season.
And then obviously Billy, but I don't really count that because he's kind of like the mind flayer himself. But
Sort of.
But so they keep showing you these shots, like teasers at the end of the episodes or at the beginning of the episodes, with this army of, you know, like brain dead, mind flayed people in the basement, right? And they never do anything with it. And there's this whole thing of them like
Well, I mean,
taking over more bodies. They just turn into goo.
They just turn into goo, yeah.
Is that satisfying?
No, not particularly.
Why didn't you just turn them into goo?
The way that I was gonna go with that point was just that the zombies, that first scene where they introduce like Billy and he meets this like alternate Upside Down South. I thought the direction they were taking it is that you get sent to the Upside Down or something when you get mind flayed, and
Yeah.
so it like switches you with your Upside Down.
That's what I
double.
thought too, like a
Yeah.
shadow person.
But which would have been
Much like the
cool.
mind flayer is like a shadow beast.
Right, but again, they just never ended up doing anything with that.
Well, that's the thing. Was that just a hallucination, or was there another version of it? Like, were there other people? It's so.
It had to have been a hallucination, I guess.
It just feels really sloppy
the
because
whole the
it
writing
never comes up again.
was not as tight, nearly as tight.
And then, even like my favorite part in the previous seasons has been where everybody like gears up, right? They spike the baseball bat, they set the traps, they're prepared for the final confrontation. It's scrappy, it's fun. And this season, the monster is like 100 feet away, crashing through the woods, and they're like, "Okay, better start barricading Hopper's house in the middle of the woods." And then 10-minute montage of them barricading, and then they get done, and all of a sudden, then the monster decides to strike. So that kind of stuff was way because like even in season 1, they got everything ready, and then they cut themselves to like attract the Demogorgon, right? The Demogorgon wasn't on its way to the house; they attracted it and then waited for it. Where this was just like, we see it, it's within eye and earshot. Now we'll barricade the house, and then it'll attack. It'll politely wait outside to attack us.
And then just not tear the house down entirely.
Yeah.
And send little spindly things.
Spindly things, even though it's this giant like 5,000 ton chunk of flesh and chemicals. And then also with 11 now being a lot more comfortable with her powers, kind of Deus Ex 11'd it, because nobody else is really that useful anymore, because she can just rip the tentacles off with her mind.
Yeah,
it's
they
pretty
swung
lame.
way too hard with 11, which kind of
The fun thing was that she had a power, but it wasn't like crazy, nutso. You couldn't just use it all the time.
Yeah, it wasn't just a fix-all.
It's becoming a crutch.
Part of it is I'm glad that they had her lose that power, because they were telegraphing that she was using it too much,
Yeah.
and so I'm glad that they're probably, I mean, she's gonna get it back next season.
Oh yeah.
Who are we kidding? But I hope that they come up with a better way of like resolving drama.
At least a smarter way, because again, this season it didn't feel as well thought out, and things were just sort of happened.
Yeah.
Like she just loses her powers, I guess, because of the worm thing.
Yeah, I thought it was a psychic thing that Billy did in her mind, but that
maybe
happened way before, so I don't know.
I don't know.
That would have been cooler. I guess that was because like I don't know why the mind flayer was just letting I don't know why he grabbed her, because the reason that he was letting her find him was so that because the connection goes both ways, because he could find her. But I don't get what that symbolized,
Well, they said, and like the mind flayer through Billy says that they're doing all of this because of her.
Yeah,
which I was like, okay, you better explain that, because you definitely didn't this season. Like, why? Who cares? She opened the gate
or closed it
originally. Well, she opened it originally.
Yeah, but she also closed it, so it could be revenge. But
also, why do they care? They have their happy toxic environment. We need to know what the Upside Down's for, or what it is, because the stuff there is sentient, but it's also not. And then
really
it's also
that they were going to do some world building of the Upside Down.
Not at all. Literally, like a 10-second, possibly hallucination with Billy, because there's people in the Upside Down, and there hasn't been before that aren't. Yeah. It was definitely the weakest in terms of world building by far, because what world building it did, it kind of just repeated from season 2.
It was the weakest in pretty much everything except for like technical execution of effects.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They definitely had a good budget. Kudos to them.
Yeah. A lot of the sets were good, they really went, all the way for the 80s references. They got the new Coke, they got the Back to the Futures, got your never-ending stories, but it didn't really have
the Blob reference.
The Blob reference. Yeah,
from
they
1960.
were in the grocery
They were in a
store.
grocery. Listen, you've seen the Steve McQueen Blob, right?
And there was a grocery store in that.
Well, it's
movie.
kind of a blobby monster. It's kind of a blob.
Sure.
But it's more bone and goop. But they were in a grocery store for a while.
That proves it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it was.
Look, I'm not gonna rule it out, but it's a little weak.
It's very weak. What else happened? Probably not a great idea to watch a show after a weekend of drinking.
Or maybe a great idea.
The fair. I didn't get the point of having the fair. Really, the only thing that happens there is
the thing that happened there.
What's his name?
Hopper?
No, the
Gary
Russian.
Ellis. Dolph Vader.
The Russian.
Oh, nice Russian?
Yes.
And Smirnoff.
It
was like Alexei,
yeah. Alexei gets killed, and then Hopper fights the Russian guys
Dolph
in the
Vader.
fair. But
it was redundant, because they could have just had.
It was like, we have way too much budget, is essentially what it was. It didn't feel like it had a purpose. I think they should have either done Star Court or the fair, or they should have focused more on the 4th of July at the fair, because that was the only reason for the fair to be there, was like the 4th of July celebration. But then they don't do anything with it. It's kind of like it was almost like it was just for the trailers, right?
Yeah. I thought they were going to tie that more into the plot, but it was really just an excuse to use the Hall of Mirrors set piece, which is, I'm not going to say tired, but I have seen it before.
Yeah,
Let's just
it's
put
so
it that
pretty
way.
cool, though.
It's cool, but it's like, they didn't go as far, they didn't have enough, and they didn't go as far in that.
And it's
scene to
been
make it
used in a lot of
worthwhile.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like the fair was just like bragging about their budget, because why so many giant steps? Because it's not even like the fair happens earlier in the season and then Star Court happens later. You know what I mean? Like, there's not like one specific memorable section of the show that's dedicated to the fair. It's just like one episode while all this stuff is going on at Starcourt, and it feels like Starcourt or one or the other is just going to kind of overshadow in usefulness and in interest.
Yeah, there's always an episode in most of the Stranger Things right before the finale that deviates.
People faffing about.
Yeah, people faffing about, and it feels like the writers just they had some airtime to fill, and so they were just like, hey, just run around a fair, shoot up some mirrors, try to kill some Russians, maybe kill off one sort of main character who is not really a main character, and then we'll just go on to the finale.
Yeah.
And that was in the last season. That was the Chicago detour.
Yep.
Episode.
I would still take season 3 over the Chicago detour.
Over that specific episode.
Yep. What else? I was really disappointed that they didn't do more with the Demogorgons, because there's the line when Dustin and Erica are down in the base and they see the cages, and she's like, "How tall did you say those things were?" And he's like 6 feet tall. And I was like, "Oh, the Russians are gonna be like training Demogorgons, and they're gonna like release them onto the base or something to explain." It still would have been campy, but at least it would have been something to explain, like them sneaking in and out of a Russian base basically undetected. At least you would have like created some chaos, right?
Sure, that would have been better if they would have,
which obviously in the post credits they bring that back. They do have like a pet Demogorgon.
Let me ask you something. Do you think that this is speculation?
Okay.
What happened between shutting off the Russian gates and the post credit scene? Did they retrieve a Demogorgon from the Upside Down beforehand? Did they open another gate after the one in Hawkins had been closed in Russia and get it? Or since that one looked weird and was like all white and fresh, like its skin was all...
It's turning into a human.
Oh, maybe. I was thinking that maybe they genetically engineered it. Or something.
Like grew it because it's kind of a plant? No, they're not plants, because it grows out of like the... Anyway,
the lore is not really important, because there is no lore about the Upside Down, which we mentioned.
Even though they keep insisting that there's like a 10-page essay that explains everything and how it works mechanically. I have yet to see that, Duffer Brothers.
Yeah.
I have yet to see that.
I would like to see it. I mean, I'm still.
I don't want them to go for more than 4 seasons, but you got a lot of explaining to do.
I guess that to the show's credit, like this one didn't turn me off of the idea of watching the 4th season.
No, because we're complaining a lot, but it wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. It was just maybe...
I enjoyed watching it. There's just a lot of... When you start to think about it, there's a lot of stuff that feels a lot less cohesive than previous seasons.
Yeah.
Or specifically the first one. Like, the first one is definitely, like, the most cohesive, the most well thought out. And then it kind of feels like from that point on, they're like, well, what do we do now? Well, we do an aliens thing where now there's a bunch of the things.
Yeah, I was not super impressed with that in season 2 either.
And then they explain some stuff a little bit. I don't know. It feels like we're getting really far from the Upside Down, but we've never actually explained what that is. Mm-hmm. But yet they keep insisting in like interviews and stuff that there's a very... like not scientific, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
For within the show's
sound.
Yes, a mechanically sound, like logical solution and understanding of it. And I think that's one of the things that tonally felt really off with season 3 or series 3 or whatever you want to call it. Is there's like nothing to do with the Upside Down. Mm-hmm. The monster was already trapped from season 2 outside of the Upside Down, and it was just basically getting a bunch of power. Mm-hmm. The Russians, as far as we know, didn't know what they were doing. The only explanation we're given from Alexei, who was pretty great, by the way. I liked him. He did a good job with like the physical comedy, I thought.
That's fine.
I thought he was good.
Okay.
His little shit-eating grin. You didn't think that was funny?
He was good at the shit-eating grin.
Oh yeah, the shit-eating.
Shit-eating.
The only explanation as to why the Russians are doing it in America, or specifically Hawkins, Indiana, is that the barrier to open the gate is a lot weaker. They couldn't do it in Russia because to punch through the matter bridge,
sure,
words, science words, to punch through the hole, it's a lot harder in
to punch
Russia.
Through the hole into the
in
upside down.
In Russia, it's a lot harder to punch through a hole because it's so cold and icy.
That makes sense.
And it's clenched.
You gotta drink a lot of vodka first.
Right, gotta warm up. But then in America, whole easy. You can cut that out. That's the only explanation we're given as to why the Russians are there. So I'm pretty sure the Russians don't even really get it. Maybe they do.
Well, the Russians seem to not get many things in this season.
Yeah, the Russians are kind of stupid.
Yeah. They could have been really imposing villains, but they just ended up being doofuses.
Yes.
Most of the characters in this
Just
kind of
sad.
got flanderized. And I get that a lot of the stuff that I think drew people in to the series in the first season was the familiarity and the fact that nobody knew what was going on. Like, to reiterate,
Yep.
you know, it was all new to these people. And I think that a lot of that breaks down when you go beyond one season, because by virtue of them having to defeat, it's like power creep.
Yep.
You know?
Oh yeah, you have to
Like,
up the ante or throw things that are very foreign to them still at them. Otherwise, it just becomes same old, same old.
And I would have gone in the direction of throwing something foreign at them in this one, rather than going with something that was, I mean, pretty derivative, if you're
Yeah.
going to be honest. I like either introduce a new type of creature, a new mechanic, and the Upside Down, and make the Soviets better. That's like, make the Soviets more imposing.
Make them less stupid. Make them more intentional. Introduce a new monster and explain again. Go through, have more of the Upside Down, because again, that was basically entirely neglected. Because apparently they've completely abandoned the idea that there are like random portals to the Upside Down, because that was not portals but like gateways to the Upside Down, because that was kind of a big thing in the first season.
That's right.
You could like crawl through the tree. There were like basically weak points in the world where you could like cross over.
That never comes up again, does
No,
it?
it's
Yeah.
never been touched again, and unless it's because the gate's closed. But I still like, again, it feels like they're getting away from the core thing without ever explaining the core thing, which is the Upside Down. And I that kind of bugged me a lot, is there's not really any more world building with that. It's just the Mind Flayer already existed from the previous season. Now it's got flesh and bone for some reason, which is fine, but couldn't we see a new villain or something to kind of continually progress the story, as opposed to it's kind of scared and it's trapped outside of its domain.
Right. And I think another big factor in like the reason why this season did not feel up to par with the previous two was that it held over a lot of the concepts from the previous two, but never actually explored them. Like, to use an example, or I guess another way to say it is, it never had a justification.
Oh yeah.
So like, why did 11 still have to hide in Hopper's cabin now, when all of the people at Hawkins National Laboratory are dead now?
Yeah.
Like, why
Or
was
gone,
she,
or yeah.
they're not a threat anymore.
Right.
You know, they all got murdered pretty much, like Samwise.
I mean, it's just it's like the X-Men. You just don't use your powers in front of the plebs, because the
Right.
plebs won't
But there's
will
nobody,
reject you. But
nobody's specifically looking for 11 anymore.
and it's not like her powers are she's not like the Dark Phoenix or whatever, where I think sometimes she just has outbursts of not being
not
able to
watching
control
that movie,
No,
by the way.
well,
I'm just saying.
I'm talking about the character, not the movie.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just warning our audience. We're probably not going to
Yeah,
do a
I'm not
video
gonna watch
on
that.
it, 'cause it's terrible.
But it's not like that. Like, she has control over her power. As far as we know, it's not like she doesn't accidentally lose her powers. It's always
Yeah, there's never been any
Lose?
indication.
use. Use is the word I was trying to use.
Lose is the word you're trying to lose.
So yeah, he just has to explain, like, she's old enough now. She's not an idiot. Don't use your powers in public.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go out. Like, he adopted her. It's not like she's just some random Russian girl anymore. You know what I mean, though? Like, why does she have to hide? I was
essentially-
confused by that in the beginning. I was like, I thought we resolved this at the end of season 2. I thought that was part of the deal he made when adopting her, is like, everybody who knew who she was or whatever is gone. Oh.
Yep. There's just a lot of examples of stuff like that where they incorporated them into the story of season 3 because they've worked in the previous 2 seasons, but they didn't take into account that like the world had changed since then. The world of the show was, and like the meta that it had created was completely different. So, which is another reason why I think the writing was not really as great as first and second season.
Too little butter stretched over too much toast.
Essentially, yeah.
I wonder, and I have no idea, I have no way of verifying this. I feel like a trilogy would have been perfect.
Yeah, trilogies
if they had
have a nice rhythm to them.
the rule of 3, I am a big fan of, and I feel like there would have been enough content. So I wonder if they didn't want to do 3 seasons or something like that, because I remember the original intention was to do like 3, if I remember correctly. I wonder if Netflix was like, nope, this is making us way too much money. You have to do another season, and so this is kind of their half-assed bridge before the last. I don't know, and I'm not making excuses for it. Again, it's not that bad. We don't hate it, or at least I don't hate it. I can't speak for you. No. It was perfectly fine. Is it as good as the previous 2? In parts, again, and a lot of that comes from like the nice visual effects, and that's where I get suckered a little bit.
There's the nice visual effects. There's also just the exact repetition of things that worked in the previous 2,
right?
Which were, I mean, they work, so they worked again, but it's like you kind of already played that.
I've seen this,
you know.
But I wonder if it wasn't that they kind of had a plan for like. Maybe they didn't know the exact number, but they had a pretty cohesive plan for the Upside Down and everything. Because this one feels kind of like the most departure. We thought that weird episode in Chicago was a departure. Right. This season feels the same, but again, kind of just recycling the same stuff from season 2. And I wonder if maybe some of that isn't because they really only had enough story for like 3 seasons, and maybe they didn't realize that at the time. So hopefully season 4 wraps up the stuff with the Upside Down, and season 3 is just kind of like that awkward stepchild that like isn't bad. It's not a bad stepchild, but sometimes it goes out and it gets a little drunk and it comes home and it breaks your china. It's not bad.
And you have to
it's
beat
just
it a little bit,
you have to
beat a little sense into it.
Every now and again, you gotta get the belt out and
no bruises, no visible marks,
but
just a little bit,
just a little bit,
just to teach it some sense.
But that's kind of what this feels like more to me, because like you've even mentioned, it's kind of a tonal departure and it feels kind of off.
Yeah,
it feels different from the previous 2 seasons, and season 2 even had some issues. That was definitely not without blame. But yeah, I wonder if it isn't a case of like, well, we don't want to blow everything that we've got for the finale, so we'll just have this 3rd season and we'll just kind of tread water while we're waiting to finalize. I don't know. Who knows? Only time will tell.
That could be possible, because that would explain a lot of the reasons why there were no super important character arcs in this.
Well, that's the thing, is I feel like this season was not all that important to the overall. Again, not really any stuff with the Upside Down, kind of just kind of wrapping up season 2 in a way with the Mind Flayer.
Yeah, it was really just an extension of that
a
basically
really long extension of season 2.
Could have just been incorporated into like one episode of season 2 if they really.
Or season 3,
9 episodes.
Season 3 could have started with like wrapping up the Mind Flayer and then gone, and I don't know. Anyway, that's kind of where I see it. Only time will tell if that's at all on base with, if season 4 is like really, really, strong and like really feels more planned out than this season. I would say that's probably the case. Netflix wanted to pad it out more, and they're like, okay, well, we don't want to blow all of our finale stuff in season 3, so we'll just have kind of just a middle stepchild.
Sure.
That's my theory. Do you think Hopper's dead?
Absolutely no. They do not have the guts.
Okay,
for that,
actually, here's my theory, and this has nothing to do with the show. So you remember how he got all jacked for Hellboy? Rest in peace, Hellboy. It was a shit movie. I didn't actually see it, but everything I read was like,
no, don't worry, it was a shit movie.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I really like the Guillermo del Toro Hellboys. Well, the first one a lot.
Good old Ron.
Second one's alright. Ron Perlman was born for that role. Yeah. Cranky old white guy.
It's funny how he looks exactly like Hellboy, even with all those prosthetics that make him look like Hellboy. It's weird.
Anyway, well, no, just like his gruff voice and everything. Anyway, Jim Hopper, whose name escapes me. It's got to be on here somewhere.
No, it's not going to be continuity because these aren't in the same place.
I don't. David Harbour.
Yeah.
David Harbour got super jacked to play Hellboy, and I wonder if he doesn't want to gain all that weight again to play Hopper, and that was why they killed him off. I don't know. I'm just saying, I wouldn't want to.
Sure.
I wouldn't want to get jacked and then go back to being a chubby sheriff.
He went back to being a chubby sheriff, though. What?
Wasn't this filmed before Hellboy?
Was it? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure this.
Oh, maybe it was. I don't know.
Uh-oh. Anyway,
maybe they'll
the
explain-
packaging
No.
of these.
Hang on, I have a theory. He's gonna get jacked in prison, in the Russian gulag. That's gonna explain.
Let's not say jacked in prison ever again. We brought these on because we're shills. Not really. We're not getting paid for this. But I did want to bring up, these are both my copies of the first and second season.
Not really
And-
relevant, but
Well, that's what you think.
yeah.
It's your personal opinion. I just wanted to talk about how great the packaging is, because a lot of times a boxed set for a show comes out and it's just a plain old plastic case, or worse yet, it's one of those cheapo plastic ones where all the discs like just fall out every time you open it. You know what I'm talking about.
I do, of course.
You know what I'm talking about.
Of course.
But it's designed to look like a VHS, and it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Honestly,
It's a little beautiful, to be honest.
it's a lot beautiful. It arouses me.
It has
Season
all of
one,
the DVDs within a separate case that has VHS printing on it.
and then there's the Blu-rays in the back, or the Blu-rays in the front, DVDs in the back. It's just really great.
Like on the second season one, it has like a little thing that's like
There's
Hawkins
bump.
video on the bottom.
Yeah, this one's got a little sticker, like a used $3 sticker for Stranger Things.
And it's like, and it has like a little like Be Kind Rewind on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
And it's one of the VHS cases. What are they going to do for season 3? I don't think there's really any VHS.
Betamax.
You think so? Same kind of dealio, but they're pretty cool. Pretty into that.
Yeah. Pick them up at local retail.
Target, only at Target.
How did Target get
I don't know.
put
Target's
'em in the wrong
oops.
fucking order?
Depends on if you read right to left or
Yeah,
left to right.
depends on if you're dyslexic or not.
We all know
That's
I am.
dyslexic. What
Yes.
dyslexia is, right?
Yeah, dyslexia is when you read all the words backwards. We're educated people. Any closing remarks?
I mean, I'll just read it. Say it again.
Reiterate.
No, say your line again.
Oh. You gotta leave it in. You gotta leave all my embarrassing stuff in.
Yeah, but I'm the editor. I get to do whatever I want.
I won't say it again.
So anyway, just to reiterate what we were saying previously, the season is not bad, but it's not great. That's pretty much how I would describe it.
I do think we made it sound worse than it is, though, because
Yeah,
we pretty much
focused on
just
the negative.
complained.
We
Was there
focused on
any
the negative.
positive?
I mean, I said that I liked the inclusion of the Russians. We said we liked a lot of the concepts. We just thought the ideas were bad.
Yeah.
The execution.
It felt like a
was
lot
bad.
of the payoff, and a lot of the payoff, or
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things were like, "Ooh, I'm curious to see where this is going." And then it kinda
phrase
doesn't go anywhere.
J.J. Abrams syndrome comes to mind.
The mystery boxes, yeah.
That was so. But I mean, generally, I think we would both recommend watching it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said in the beginning, I think anyone who's going to watch this already watched it. So you came here to hear our intellectual opinions on the various aspects of the film, the story, the characters.
Should have been wearing my
the
Rick and Morty
arcs.
shirt.
Yeah. Your head wouldn't fit in the shot. They wouldn't frame up right.
We don't have a big enough set for that.
Yeah.
For Rick and Morty shirt wearers.
Yep. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully we won't wait 2 months between our next upload and this one. That'd be great. Don?
Why is it my fault?
Eh.
Cheers.